On this week's episode of the Vets and Real Estate Podcast, I will be joined by Scott Small, former Air Force officer turned to a divorce specialist inside of real estate. Stay tuned and we'll have a good conversation with Scott. All right, well, welcome to our first episode of the Vets and Real Estate Podcast. I'm here joined with Scott Small, realtor here out of San Antonio. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Well, thank you very much, Will. It's a pleasure to be here and I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, so kind of excited again, first episode. Excited to get this one started. I'm sure there's going to be some learning curves as we get going on, but you know, most people aren't worried about that. They want to hear your story. So, what did you do? Where were you? I know you're officer in the Air Force.
Correct. Yeah.
Tell me about that transition. Oftentimes, you know, I think we see real estate folks, we see them on the listed side, but you're a little bit of a different breed. What I guess did you do in the Air Force, and then?
Well, if I could give you a little bit of background on
Sure.
that from the very beginning, I tell people that I got into real estate partly because of my yearbook in 1977. It told me that's what I was going to do. Next to the mug shot, I had real estate agent and Air Force officer flying KC-135s.
Okay.
And went to nav school, and GPS came along, didn't need me anymore. Still in the service, and I did personnel for about 13 years, personnel officer. And then after that, 7 years as services commander, spent a little time over in the sandbox after 9/11. And then I decided I wasn't going to pursue the career anymore because I had two small children, and that would require me going off to Air Command Staff College for a year, and I just didn't feel good about leaving my kids behind, so they put me out to pasture in logistics and plans, and that's where I finished up. And then realizing what I had in my yearbook, I thought, now's the time to do that real estate thing that I had next to that mugshot.
So had that been like in your mind the entire time that I'm going to eventually get into real estate after your military career, or was it kind of like, now that I'm looking at another plan, what do I do?
Well, there are some other things that came into the mix on a more personal nature, but I tell people it took my middle-age crisis to get me into real estate. So here we are. I've been doing this now for about 21 years, and no regrets. I love it, and I had an opportunity where I had a separation pay for a civilian job I was also doing at the time. And I thought, I could go buy some fun toys with that, or perhaps educate myself, and that can never be repossessed. So
fair. So he's either the Corvette or is a real estate license, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The right Corvette may have been worth some money now, but no, it was a great decision, and absolutely no regrets, and love every minute of it. I tell people when they ask, Scott, why'd you get into real estate? And I tell them, well, after 15 years in the corporate world and 21 in the military and 2 divorces, I finally figured out I'm simply someone that can't be managed. And so the entrepreneurial spirit ran deep in my veins. So.
Fair enough. Yeah. So what do you do now that you got out of the service and you've obviously been doing real estate for a while? Yeah. What is it that you do day to day now? I mean, I know you sell homes, but I understand you've got a little bit of a specialty inside of that as well.
Absolutely. And, when I first got into it, I thought, okay, I've got this military career. I can serve any military member that's needing help with real estate. And I found out that just about everyone that leaves the military and gets into real estate, they're thinking the same thing. So it was kind of an oversaturated market in that respect. And another angle I looked at, having been born and raised in a home up in New England, it was built in the late 1700s, and I thought, historic homes could be a really cool niche. And that was fun too, but it's a very finite resource. I mean, you get to the central part of San Antonio, and that's pretty much it. And I love it. It's still a passion, and I have a lot to share and offer when it comes to that. But going back to those 2 divorces, I thought, here's a niche that needs to be filled. Going through that first one, it was agonizing. It was horrible. And this is back in late 1900s, there was no internet to get any good information. And I heard a marketplace report. I think it was on Texas Public Radio. But marketplace report, they were talking about during the recession, 2008, 2009, that people were postponing their divorce because of the recession. It was financial suicide to pursue it. And I thought, these people probably aren't going to love each other that much more when we come out of this economy. And perhaps that's a niche. And so I was the first in San Antonio to get the Certified Real Estate Divorce Specialist designation, and then followed that up with the RCSD, which is the Real Estate Collaborative Specialist / Divorce. And it's been an interesting ride. An earlier mentor of mine said, Scott, if you want to find a niche, go where no one else is, do what no one else wants to do, and then do it better than anyone else can.
So that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, who would want to do that? But you're pointing out exactly that nobody else is there to compete, and you're a specialist in there.
Yeah. And it's not so much the competition as it is. I really had a passion to help these people, just knowing what I went through. And now we're sponsoring a monthly workshop. We have it at our brokerage at Keller Williams Legacy. And I own the license for Second Saturday Divorce Workshops for San Antonio. And it's a half-day workshop. It's comprised of an attorney that talks about the do's and the don'ts and the different styles of divorce and, the different the angles to get through it. Then I also have a therapist. She is amazing. She comes in from Seguin, put herself through grad school, working as a paralegal in a family law firm. So she has special insight into the emotional and family issues. Yeah, she's just amazing. And then we have a financial planner that talks about the importance of doing the inventory and the budget and just, how to negotiate away the things you don't want for the things that you do want. And then I just kind of piggyback coattail on that with who gets the house, who wants the house, refinancing versus selling, and some scary stories that I've heard over the years.
I could only imagine. I've got one divorce under my belt as well. Luckily, we didn't have a house and all that kind of stuff, so it was relatively easy. But I could imagine that it's very emotionally charged. Not everybody is thinking clearly in those situations, and I don't know. You've got to be imagine just a calming presence through a lot of that, just to, I guess, get the transaction completed and ultimately serve those clients as best you can.
Absolutely. And it's some of the scary stories. And you hit the nail right on the head, Will. It's emotion based, and if you stop to look at it, divorce is really it's a lawsuit. But if you pursue it as nothing more than a business negotiation and take the emotion out of it, it could be a lot easier on folks. But when you bring that emotion into it, that's when things get testy and ugly. And
I could certainly imagine. Now, you said something interesting when you first decided to get into real estate, that you were going to go after the military clientele. You're going to work on the relocation. You're going to talk to other veterans, and I think for many veterans, like that's easy. I know when I have somebody else is a veteran, we talk to each other a little bit differently, right?
Right.
The guard is down. You realize you can be a little bit more of you, or at least the military version of you. That if you've spent some time, a lot of who you are. Why you said everybody else was doing it, so. I guess what was the struggle? Did you try that for a while and just realize like I wasn't getting the business? I mean, San Antonio is military city of USA. I would imagine the market was pretty flush with opportunities. But I guess walk through that side, why you decided not to go that way, or do you still serve quite a bit of the military community?
Well, I still serve some of the military community, and I helped a young couple just this past year, as a matter of fact, coming in from Pennsylvania, and this service member was a major. Had never owned a house before, and that just blew me away. It's like, really? I mean, for every time you PCS, you could have purchased a property that could be an investment opportunity, and made some money for yourself along the way. But he had never done it. He and his wife had just always rented, and when they were coming to San Antonio, that's all they wanted to see was rentals. And I suggested to them, let's take a look at what's in the purchase market and take a look at those things. Ultimately, they ended up, it was a new construction, and the builder was offering 2.9, 3.9, and 4.9. It was kind of a graduated interest rate, and by the time they had PCS, they could roll that over as an assumable at 4.9. And when they moved into that, their monthly payment, PITI, everything all together, was going to be less than any of the rentals that were even attractive to them.
Oh, wow.
So it worked out really, really well, and they're happy. They didn't have to lie about how many cats they were bringing and, stuff like that. But,
Yeah, I can imagine that's the fun part, especially serving military. Kind of after the fact that you've been there, you've done that as a major. I mean, you're mid to late career, right? I mean, you've probably PCS'd, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times. Like the PCS should be easy at that point. But yeah, I can imagine bought a house somewhere there. So that's interesting. I imagine that's not, while it feels shocking, it probably isn't nearly as shocking as I would imagine. Running across those clients that just never done it. I think most of the time we think it's the new airman, the new E4, E5, recently married, first or second PCS. They're still trying to figure it out, and those would be the ones you got to really handhold and figure out. But this is some major. He's been in 10 years, 12 years, something like that at this point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And to take a deeper dive on the BAH, they really don't stop to think about the BAH. It's just, let's pay the bill. That's what BAH looks like to them. But it can actually be used to fuel investment. And even the young airman or the young soldier, I mean, you could still probably qualify to buy a house and get 2 or 3 roommates. If you're a single troop and get 2 or 3 roommates to help you pay the mortgage, then you've got that investment property along with your BAH. And who knows, you get 2 or 3 roommates, and there's probably some BAH money left over at the end of the month to do some fun stuff.
That's what we did. So yeah, I mean, exactly. And maybe we didn't buy a house, or somebody bought the house, but many of us just rented with them, and
there you go.
You save the money. So yeah. So you mentioned you've been in real estate for a minute or two.
Right. Yeah.
What was that biggest shock when you transitioned out of military service into real estate? Maybe 2-3 years in, you're like, I didn't expect it to be this way.
Well, I'm not so sure there was a shock, but taking the military career and you know what it's like to adapt and modify and become self-sufficient and yet resilient, and realize that any little hurdle that comes up can be overcome. And so that, the military career kind of helped me that way. I can't say as though I was really shocked about anything until 2008 came along. That just kind of smacked all of us down.
Sure.
And I had a nice little career going on. I started off with RE/MAX back in the day, and it was a $1,500 a month desk fee, 100% professional fee compensation. And that was great as long as there were houses to sell. But you go 3 months without a transaction, and you're paying someone else's mortgage instead of your own, and you have to transition. But again, adapt and modify. Moved on, found another brokerage that was a little bit more reasonable for the compensation as we went along, and then transitioned from there to a bigger brokerage when things got a little bit nicer. Yeah.
I think many residential agents coming in, they don't realize that every real estate brokerage is different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I've been in and around them as well.
Right.
Where you've got some that it's a desk fee, you get 100%, you get those kind of options, where others are pay per transaction. If you were starting over, where do you think you would have gone, or what advice would you give somebody who's kind of transitioning and looking for a brokerage from day one? What advice would you give them when they're looking for that brokerage?
That's a great question. Well, I would suggest they interview more than one, and try to get a feel for the broker and what feels comfortable, what feels like home to them. Several of the brokers that I interviewed with before I ended up with the one I'm in now, and the broker, he was kind of showing me around. He was impressed with the whole divorce stuff I had going on behind. What kind of scared me away was he had one of his people come up to him, and he didn't realize it was one of his agents. And then another one had come up to him, and he just kind of brushed her off. She had an important question, and it's like, this isn't my home. I'm not going to be here. And interviewed with 2 or 3 others, and the one that felt like home is the one where I'm at now, where I walked in, there was no appointment, sat down with the broker, just kind of open door, we were having a conversation like you and I are right now, and it felt comfortable, and I've been there with them now for going on 13 years, and no regrets. It's
awesome.
Yeah. So I guess to answer your question is, it's kind of like dating. Okay, you have an idea in mind of what you want, who you want to be with, and when it feels good, you just kind of press on from there.
Okay, fair enough. I know a lot of times, at least the questions I've gotten from agents that are trying to start off is like, what should my split be? What should that look like? And I mean,
Yeah.
at least from my perspective, if you get $0 in commission, who cares if you get 100%? Because you get nothing, right?
This is
And-
true.
And I think that's a lot of times that we come in, well, I want as much money as I can be, but oftentimes it comes to, I think, the value conversation, which kind of goes into what you're talking about with family, right?
Right.
If they're doing all the lead gen, if they're doing all that kind of stuff, and you just got to work leads, then yeah, the brokerage is spending a lot of money on you, so you don't have to do a lot of work. So you're paying for it just through a higher split. Whereas if you're at a different model where maybe you're paying desk fees and you're going out there doing everything, or another model where, maybe you're capping or something like that, I think it really kind of comes down to, at least my perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you live this much more than I do. It really comes down to what value you're getting, and are you getting what you're paying for in that value?
Right,
Some people want everything done for them. Other people like, just give me an office and let me go sell real estate.
Yeah, you're right. It depends on the individual. And, I never got into it just for the money.
Okay.
The thing I love about real estate, Will, is that you can be as successful as you choose. And, you get to a certain age, like me, okay, a man of a certain age.
20, 23, 24, right?
Yeah, right. My mother's a virgin. But, time sometimes becomes more valuable.
Okay.
And my wife, I love her and like spending time with her and doing things with her. So time has become more important than just the paycheck. We live a comfortable life. We're doing okay, but I'm not driven by the dollar sign so much. I have no aspirations to, sell 20 million a year. That's not my goal. I like to have fun. I like to have fun doing what I'm doing and just enjoying it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. Looking to transition, I think one of the questions that come up that we get a lot from veterans that look at transition is about getting their real estate license. Of course, every state is different, right? Texas is different than Alabama and what have you. They're all different.
Right.
What is that real estate license? And again, you've been around for a little bit of time. You've seen what it used to be, what it's come, what it's looking like it's going to become. From there, what advice, or when it comes to getting that real estate license, what advice would you give, or what are the things that you should be looking out for when you're looking to get getting that real estate license?
Well, the most important thing is where you go to get your education to fill the course criteria. I took all of my classes at Sabor, and I thought that was great. It was financially feasible for me.
Mm-hmm.
The instructors were all realtors, and so they had their own experience and their stories to bring to the table. And I think that and you might be up on this too in your position with Sabor, but the pass rate the first time around is like 20% of the people who take their exam pass the first time. And I was fortunate in being one of those 20%. But the education at Sabor, I think, was amazing, and they have benefits there at the Realtor Academy for people who are military and transitioning into that to take those classes and use their post 9/11 GI Bill or some other discount that they may have. Karen's phenomenal as far as helping people to line up their classes and take their tests. But what really helped me the most in preparing for that was the principles textbook.
Okay.
I just went to the back and memorized every word in the glossary. I figured, if you understood the questions, you could probably come up with an answer. But the glossary is just full of terminology that, being in the military, we all have our own jargon.
Sure.
And different words for different things. And the glossary is what really helped me the most.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting sometimes with it as well is that my best friend's a Marine, right? When he and I talk about our service, like sometimes the language just doesn't jive. Right. And I think even in real estate, you find that same thing where I'm on the commercial side, where you're on the residential side.
Yeah.
Sometimes the way we talk about things just in our specialty can be a little bit different. So yeah, I would absolutely agree that the jargon inside of real estate or just the terms and all that can absolutely be different. And I think that could be extremely confusing.
Absolutely. It could be. And, having gone through NAV school, okay, real estate was easy.
I can
Okay?
imagine,
I
right?
mean, this is back before GPS, and we had to factor winds and things, so
Sure.
and then keep the plane on course. But real estate was a walk in the park compared to that. And the military career, I think, really helps prepare you for the real estate. Again, we were talking about it earlier. The the self-discipline that comes with it. And if you are going to make this a career, then you need to have that self-discipline in order to keep your focus and moving forward. It's very easy, I think, to think that it's easy money and great paycheck today and then blow it, but you don't have the discipline to keep yourself in check and make sure that you're planning for the next opportunity.
Well, you kind of alluded to that as well, right? You had a great career early on, and then all of a sudden '08 came, which, I mean, '08 was fun for a lot of it. I got in the industry at the tail end of this, so I got to talk to all the investors that had survived. And I credit a lot of my successes. Everybody I was talking to had survived the crash. You actually went through the crash where I was getting out of the service as the crash was wrapping up. But I think a lot of people don't realize that the money may be great today. You're making a ton of money and it's great, but you really have to plan. I mean, that was a 2 or 3 year downturn in the cycle.
Oh, it was tough.
I mean, how do you survive that?
Well, kids were motivation. Okay,
Fair enough.
I had 2 kids that were in school, and if it weren't for them, I probably would have looked for a nice piece of cardboard, a Sharpie, and an overpass. But I had to struggle on. And here I was at the time, 2008. I don't mind sharing the age, but I was about 50 years old. And I realized no one was going to hire me at 50 years old and pay me what I had been accustomed to earning.
Fair.
So you just kind of hunker down, bite the bullet, and come up with that plan, adapt and modify. And that's when I got into the whole divorce thing, thinking, okay, I can be an expert at something. And it's a niche that it's been an interesting ride. From the workshop, I might find 2 or 3 transactions a year from that, but that's not why we do the workshop. Again, it's to help those folks. But what's been interesting is the presenters. I mentioned the financial planner, I mentioned the therapist and the attorney, and there's some cross-pollination there in our referral business. I mean, the attorney has, just this year, 2 probate opportunities that I'm working with him. And that's a whole other field that it's become an education. I'm doing my first muniment of title right now, which I'd never done or even heard of before, but it's an option as opposed to the regular probate process. So it's, it goes back, I guess, to my days as a newly minted second lieutenant, and I was being mentored by a major, and he said, Scott, he says, the more you know, the more valuable you are. And he was the first navigator to ever become a wing commander.
Oh, okay.
You don't usually see that. It's usually the pilots that become the wing commander.
They're the cool guys, right?
But he was the one that lived his philosophy. He was the only one who'd filled all the boxes to be promoted to become a wing commander. So education is key. And you were alluding to earlier about the different criteria for Texas and some of the other states. And being originally from Maine, I could fog up a mirror right now and get a real estate license up in Maine. The criteria is not that stiff, but you come to Texas, and I think California is the other one that's equal to us as far as the amount of education that's necessary to get your license. It's not easy, but once you get a Texas license, I think that the world is your oyster. You can probably take that and go anywhere to practice real estate.
Yeah, I would agree with that aspect. Is at least Texas, when you look at several other states in comparison, there's a lot more education early on.
Right. Yeah,
and some of that's, I think, could be good. I think some of that could be bad as well, right? Because we joke a lot of times that you know how many square feet are an acreage after you pass your test, but how often do you use that? I mean, in my world, I use it all the time, right? But
sure.
But for
435/60, right? Yeah.
But for some who are just selling houses and you know it's a quarter acre lot, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
They never use a lot of that, so I can see the argument either way that the license is good. It's a little harder. The barrier to entry maybe a little bit higher on something like that. But how much of that really is usable, I think it could be debatable. Which kind of goes back to what you're saying with your brokerage and finding your home. There's some brokerages that do amazing jobs at training and finding that mentorship and finding those things early on. Which hopefully with this podcast we're going to help bridge that and help individuals find where they should go.
Yeah.
One thing that how you and I know each other from is really from the association world, right?
Right.
Why, out of everything you could be spending time on, you mentioned family's important to you, that it's really about time
Right.
At this point. Why would you get involved in the association? What is it that's gotten you interested? I guess when I'm saying the association, we're talking about the board of realtors. Why would you want to get involved? Why would you decide to go and be a director at the San Antonio Board of Realtors?
That's a good question too. I know we had our speed bumps a few years ago in the association, and my dad was a military man, and he had raised me to. He said, rather than complain about something, do something. And if you don't like the way something's being run, then step up and do something about it. And that's what first got me into being interested in the association. Signed up with a few committees, and just that experience alone was invaluable. You talk to people and meet people that are in your industry, and yeah, you're never going to sell them anything, but the information that you get, that becomes part of your education. That makes you a better realtor and moving on. And stepping up and filling a position in the board, I didn't have any great aspirations to do that in the beginning. I was approached by a couple of past chairs that suggested I get involved. I thought, okay, well, fine, let's see what that's all about. And again, no regrets, and happy to be a part of the board. I think we have a phenomenal board, especially compared to the speed bump years ago, where we are a cohesive team and we get things done together. And it's kind of like that whole military philosophy that we press on and get the job done.
Well, I don't know if you remember, that's where we met each other for the very first time, was actually interviewing for the board. The only reason I remember, there was a guy named Scott, and he specialized in divorce. And I'm like, that is a weird place to specialize. And then, sure enough, over the years, we've got to know each other a little bit more. And I was like, oh, it was literally, I forget if you were first or I was first or whatever. We're sitting there in the lobby, and I remember you're like, I specialize in divorces. I'm like, I didn't know that could even be a specialty. That's crazy. But you're right. Outside of that, your and I path probably would never cross.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's, at least for me, that's what's been interesting, other than serving and helping, kind of guide the association through things. But value it is from getting to know people. Real estate really is a people business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you've alluded to the fact of the more knowledge you have, the more value you become.
Absolutely.
We can't have all the knowledge. So sometimes that knowledge is just knowing that Scott knows all this, and I just bring Scott in to use his knowledge, and maybe that's the knowledge you need to have sometimes.
Yeah, and you had alluded to also as far as mentorship and finding the right brokerage. And, one of the things that we're doing at my brokerage now is we're having some of the more seasoned realtors mentoring some of the newer ones. By and large, we've brought in mostly seasoned realtors at our brokerage, but there are some newer ones, 2 or 3 years in the game, and they still have some good background, but they need a little extra push. And some other realtors may find what I'm going to say is kind of controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway.
But here's the tea. It's going to get interesting now, right?
Well, and I sat down with Stephen, my broker, and when he asked me to step in and be a mentor, and I said, look, Stephen, I'm not going to serve the same 100-year-old warmed-up hash that all the other brokers are telling their agents to do. I'm not going to say go and make phone calls for 5 hours a day. And I'm not going to tell them to go door knock and do things that, by and large, they wouldn't want to have done to them. Mm-hmm. I mentioned earlier that real estate is something you can have fun with. And if you don't like it, don't do it. And so one of the things that I think really helped me early in my career was, as you mentioned, it's a people business. And I went on to meetup.com. It's not a dating site, but I went on to meetup.com, and there's like 530 something different organizations in San Antonio alone. And there's certainly something there for everyone. And I would just go to networking events. I love business networking. They had speed networking, dating type things, and I'd go to those. And what was fun to me was going into the room, looking for the loneliest person there.
That was usually me.
Yeah. I think isn't that where we first met? Maybe
could have been. I did the same thing on Meetup.com, and then sat in the back because I'm such an introvert. So yeah, totally agree.
But I'd go to that person and say something to the effect of, "Hey, it looks like you need someone to talk to too," and we'd strike up a conversation. And if I met 2 or 3 people that way in one session, I thought, this is a great night.
Yeah.
And there were others that were just how many business cards they could hand out, and you know what we do with those. They get tossed in the trash as soon as you get home because there's no connection with that person. But I love the networking, and there was opportunity that came from that. And it's just another thing, having fun with what you do. whether it's a checkout line at HEB or anywhere. I'll say to the cashier when we're finished, just, you know what, you've been so wonderful today. I'm going to let you buy a house from me. And I hand them the card. Sometimes I get a laugh, but if I can make someone smile, just one person smile each day, I figure that's a good day.
Yeah, that's fair. For me, I'm more introverted, and I don't know. Here I am hosting all this, and you see me everywhere else.
The chair of Save
yeah,
War.
right. So, who would have thought? But if you look at me, my business, I'm much more introverted when it comes to that. I hate networking events. I hate doing all that, and I force myself to do it. But I think sometimes it's self-talk, and just the way that you were talking about there. If I can make somebody smile, I can do that. I'm goofy. I can do that. I think it's those little things, that self-talk, that really kind of discourages us to really do all that. Where I know that's something I've struggled with, is trying to get there. Where again, I don't want to talk to strangers, but in our business, you kind of have to.
Yeah, and if you don't approach it like, there's my next transaction. I mean, don't ever look at the person that way. Yeah. It's just talk to people because you want to, and if something comes of it, great. And if not, then maybe you made a new friend or someone you can play poker with, or you never know. So.
I think the commission breath is real. Yeah. That you get desperate, you start looking. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same thing with dating. And a lot of times I approach sales and dating are largely the same. Yeah. Going out there, you're trying to get somebody interested, you're trying to turn around and build a relationship with them, and then eventually either move on in a relationship with them, or you're trying to sell them a property or work with them or somehow. So I think it's that same kind of mindset a lot of times, that you just gotta approach it, and the more you do it, the more comfortable it gets through that process.
Yeah, but you hit on a great point too, that sometimes the harder you try, the greater you're going to fail too.
Right.
I mean, it's the commission breath, like you had brought up. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
And no one likes to be sold. No one likes to be pushed. And if you approach your business and come across that way, be genuine, be real, be there to help, have the servant's heart, and that's where you'll find your success.
Okay, fair. If I'm a brand new agent, transition. There you go. Mm-hmm. Out of the military. Yeah. Where should I be going, or what should I be doing? I guess just to connect. Either we talked about meetup.com and those kind of things, networking. But if I'm trying to find other veterans or other real estate professionals, where should I be going, or what should I be doing to start building that peer group of other military veterans that I could build those relationships with?
Okay, so assuming you already have your license.
Yeah, I've already got my license. I'm trying to start to forge my way into the industry.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple things. One, of course, we have the military advisory group at SABOR. Get involved with that. You're going to find some like-minded people, some spouses that are military spouses, and there's some connections to be made there. And we've had a couple field trips. I'm the liaison this year for military advisory. And we've done a couple of field trips. We went to Fort Sam and the USO and visited them, and just to kind of get a sense of what that was all about. We went to Pause for Purple Hearts. That was a fun field trip too, and you can get some connections. But as far as getting a designation, some of that alphabet soup after your name, the first thing I would do is get your MRP. It's your military relocation professional, and it's really easy, and it's not one of those renewable year after year. It's a one and done. You get it and you can carry it. It's a certification, but it's going to help to explain to especially the people that are transitioning in and out of the military how they can use their BAH, how they can use the VA, and what the rules are on that. So many people that just don't have a clue that their VA isn't as finite as it used to be anymore. And another thing too, I finished off my career with the Air National Guard, and a lot of reservists don't realize that the VA is accessible to them.
True.
Another great resource is Texas Veteran Land Board. They have an amazing opportunity for folks, especially if they have 30% or greater disability, to basically subsidize their interest rate. They don't actually make the loans. You can use a conventional FHA, VA vehicle to buy a house. And every Friday at about 5:30 in the afternoon, they post what their interest rate is going to be for the entire week. It doesn't fluctuate so much as you see in the real world. And then that 30% disability, take another half point off, whatever that is. And it's a great opportunity for folks to just get their name on the list as a realtor. They have a dedicated realtor list, and they have a dedicated lender list that you take their couple-hour course, and you're on.
Yeah,
You're
that's
on.
actually that's how I bought my house, was going through that program.
Oh, no
Somebody
kidding.
said you should go look at this. Like, okay. So honestly, I took my MRP because I was going to buy my own house, and I was stubborn, thinking I'm going to do it myself. I don't need another agent. I'm an agent. I can do it.
Sure.
Yeah, I probably would have been needing you because I thought my wife and I were going to get divorced after that transaction because I didn't know what I was doing, right? But actually sat down and went through those courses, took the MRP
Yeah.
to go through it, and then sat down and took through that Texas Veterans Land Board certification course. I think it was 2 or 3 hours,
Right.
and realized, oh, here's what I can do. Here's how I can utilize these programs, which are absolutely out there. And I think a lot of times it's just a secret. But if you're plugged into your association, you're plugged into those organizations that are teaching you and showing you these other things, you're talking to other people. That's exactly what you need. That's how you learn these things.
Absolutely. Again, it's the education. The more you know, the more valuable you are. And especially coming out of transitioning out of the military, getting into real estate, how are you going to help your fellow troop?
Right.
That's the whole key. That's the whole goal. And it's the servant's heart, the spirit of giving and helping. And if you do that right, the money will find you. You don't have to go out looking for that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, so to wrap it up, we've talked about a lot of things.
Sure.
So if we were to wrap up the entire interview into one thing you did great in your career and one thing you probably didn't do as well in your career and you wish you could go back and do it again, what would be those things?
That's a tough one. I don't know. Being a former rated guy, I have a hard time admitting failure.
Fair enough.
My wife will tell you that too. I think one of the things that I did well early in the career was realizing that a career in real estate is a lot like building a house. You have to have a good foundation.
Okay.
And I didn't have any clients, but I had a lot of time. And I thought, and I still do it today. I have a certain amount of time cut out for myself every Friday where I'm thinking about the business. And I had a lot more time when I first started real estate thinking,
Sure.
okay, how am I going to do this and do it right so that I'm not going to have to work so hard down the road? And a lot of that foundation was getting your CRM together and figuring out how are you going to keep track of the people that you meet, that the people you can help and the people you have helped, and start your book of business from there. As far as something that I wished I could have done differently sooner is, instead of starting off with that first brokerage, if I had met the broker I'm with now 21 years ago.
Fair enough.
I mean, he's just an awesome guy, and he's there when you need him, and he's not when you don't. And you have the freedom to run your business. His biggest mantra, as long as you don't lie, cheat, or steal, then run your business as best as you can, take care of your people as best as you can.
Yeah.
And that's, it's an easy mantra to live by.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I appreciate it. This was a great first episode. I think there's a lot of tidbits that we certainly took out of this. So I appreciate you and your time for coming in, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Will. I think that what you're doing here is just amazing, and I have to commend you for stepping up and taking this role and helping our fellow service people to figure out what's next. And I think this is an awesome thing you're doing.
Awesome.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you so much.
Sure.